Hi, guys. I'm Miriam Quitelis, and we are on chapter 6 of Florence Scovel Shinn's The Game of Life and How to Play It. So we are on chapter 6, and it says, Casting the Burden. Let's get started. Impressing the subconscious. When man knows his own powers and the workings of his mind, his great desire is to find an easy and quick way to impress the subconscious with good, for simply an intellectual knowledge of the truth will not bring results. In my own case, I found the easiest way is in, quote, casting the burden. I'm curious. The metaphysician once explained, it is in this manner, he said, the only thing which gives anything weight in nature is the law of gravitation. And if a boulder could be taken high above the planet, there would be no weight in that boulder. And that is just what Jesus Christ meant when he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He had overcome the world vibration and functioned in the fourth dimensional realm. I mean, she's talking about this in 1923, where there is only perfection, completion, life, and joy. He said, come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Quote, take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We are also told in the 55th Psalm to, quote, cast thy burdens upon the Lord. Many passages in the Bible state that the battle is God's, not man's, and that man is always to, quote, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. This indicates that the superconscious mind, or Christ within, is the department which fights man's battles and relieves him of burdens. We see, therefore, that man violates law if he carries a burden, and a burden is an adverse thought or condition, and this thought or condition has its roots in the subconscious. So we violate the law if we carry the burden ourselves. I got it. Okay. It seems almost impossible to make any headway directing the subconscious from the conscious or reasoning mind, as the reasoning mind, or the intellect, is limited in its conceptions and filled with doubts and fears. How scientific it is then. Okay, I do know how to read, but the letters on this book are so tiny. Look. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know if you could tell, but they're so small. Anyway, let me start over. How scientific it then is to cast the burden upon the superconscious mind, or Christ within, where it is, quote, made light or dissolved into its native nothingness. For example, women in urgent need of money made light upon the Christ within. The superconscious with the statement, I cast this burden of lack on the Christ within and go free to have plenty. The belief in lack was her burden, and as she cast it upon the superconscious with its belief of plenty, an avalanche of supply was the result. We read, the Christ in you, the hope of glory. Another example of one of my students had been given a new piano, and there was no room in her studio for it until she had moved out of the old one. She was in a state of perplexity. She wanted to keep the old piano, but knew of no place to send it. She became desperate, as the new piano was to be sent immediately. In fact, was on its way, with no place to put it. She said it came to her to repeat, quote, I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. A few moments later, her phone rang. and a woman friend asked if she might rent her old piano, and it was moved out a few minutes before the new one arrived. I knew a woman whose burden was resentment. She said, I cast this burden of resentment on the Christ within and go free, to be loving, harmonious, and happy. The almighty subconscious flooded the conscious with love, and her whole life was changed. 4 years, resentment had held her in state of torment and imprisoned her soul, the subconscious mind. The statement should be made over and over and over, sometimes for hours at a time, silently or audibly, with quietness but determination. I've often compared it to winding up a victrola. We must wind ourselves up with spoken word. Sounds like when I play music. Wind myself up to go to work on Mondays. I have noticed in casting the burden, after a little while, one seems to see clearly. It is impossible to have clear vision while in the throes of carnal mind. Doubts and fears poison the mind and body, and imagination runs riot, attracting disaster and disease. In steadily repeating the affirmation, I cast this burden on the Christ within and go free, the vision clears, and with it, a feeling of relief, and sooner or later comes the manifestation of good, be it health, happiness, or supply. One of my students once asked me to explain the darkness before the dawn. I referred to in a preceding chapter to the fact that often, before the big demonstration, everything seems to go wrong. And deep depression clouds the consciousness. It means that out of the subconscious are rising the doubts and fears of the ages. These old derelicts of the subconscious rise to the surface to be put out. It is then that man should clap his cymbals, like symbols with a C, by the way, C and a Y, symbols, like Jehovah Shaphat, and give thanks that he is saved, even though he seems surrounded by the enemy. The situation of lack or disease, that's the enemy. The student continued, quote, how long must one remain in the dark? And I replied, until one can see in the dark. And casting the burden enables one to see in the dark. In order to impress the subconscious, active faith is always essential. Of course, faith without works is dead. In these chapters, I have endeavored to bring out this point. Yes, you have. Jesus Christ showed active faith when, quote, he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground before he gave thanks for the loaves and the fishes. I give another example showing how necessary this step is. In fact, active faith is the bridge over which man passes to his promised land. Active faith. Active. Let's look at the word active. Through misunderstanding, a woman had been separated from her husband, whom she loved deeply. He refused all offers of reconciliation and would not communicate with her in any way. Coming into the knowledge of spiritual law, she denied the appearance of separation. She made this statement, there's no separation in divine mind. Therefore, I cannot be separated from the love and companionship which are mine by divine right. She showed active faith, okay, by arranging a place for him in the table every day. Okay, so it's active faith, all right? Thereby impressing the subconscious with a picture of his return. Over a year passed, but she never wavered. And one day he walked in. The subconscious is often impressed through music. Music has a fourth dimensional quality and releases the soul from imprisonment. It makes wonderful things seem possible and easy of accomplishment. That is so true. I'm underlying the heck out of this chapter. Anyway, I have a friend who uses her Victrola daily for this purpose. It puts her in perfect harmony and releases the imagination. Another woman often dances while making her affirmations. The rhythm and harmony of music and motion carries her words forth with tremendous power. I'm making a note here for my talk in a minute. The student must remember also not to despise the quote day of small things. Invariably, before demonstration comes signs of land. Before Columbus reached America, he saw birds and twigs, which showed him land was near. So it is with a demonstration, but often the student mistakes it for the demonstration itself and is disappointed. For example, a woman had spoken the word for a set of dishes. Not long afterwards, a friend gave her a dish which was old and cracked. She came to me and said, "Well, I asked for a set of dishes, and all I got was a cracked plate." I replied, "The plate was only a sign of land. It shows your dishes are coming. Look upon it as birds and seaweed." And not long afterwards, the dishes came. Continually, quote, making believe impresses the subconscious. Continually making believe impresses the subconscious. If only makes believe, if one makes believe he is rich and makes believe he is successful, in due time he will reap. Children are always making believe, and except ye be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. For example, I know a woman who was very poor, but no one would make her feel poor. She earned a small amount of money from rich friends who constantly reminded her of her poverty and to be careful in saving. Regardless of their admonition, she would spend all her earnings on a hat and make someone a gift and be in a rapturous state of mind. Her thoughts were always centered on beautiful clothes and rings and things, but without envying others. That's important too, I'm sure. She lived in the world of the wondrous, and only riches seemed real to her. Before long, she married a rich man, and the rings and things became visible. I do not know whether a man was the divine selection, but opulence had to manifest in her life, and she had imaged only opulence. As she had imaged only opulence. There's no peace or happiness for man until he has erased all fear from the subconscious. That is true. Fear is misdirected energy and must be redirected or transmuted into faith. Jesus Christ said, "Why are ye faithful, O ye of little faith? All things are possible to him that believeth." I asked so often by my students, "How can I get rid of fear?" I reply, "By walking up to the things you are afraid of. The lion takes its fierceness from your fear. Walk up to the lion and he will disappear. Run away and he runs after you." I have shown in previous chapter how the lion of lack disappeared when the individual spent money fearlessly, showing faith that God was his supply and therefore unfailing. Many of my students, I'm going to turn the heat on. Many of my students have come out of bondage of poverty and are now bountifully supplied through losing all fear of letting money go out. The subconscious is impressed with truth that God is the giver and the gift. Therefore, as one is one with the giver, he is one with the gift. A splendid statement is, "I now thank God the giver for God the gift." Man has long separated himself from his good and his supply through thoughts of separation and lack, that sometimes it takes dynamite to dislodge the false ideas that the subconscious and the dynamite is a big situation. We see in the foregoing illustration how the individual was freed from his bondage by showing fearlessness. Man should watch himself hourly to detect if his motive for action is fear or faith. Fear or faith. Notice it didn't say love, faith. Choose ye this day whom we shall serve, fear or faith. Perhaps when fear is of personality, then do not void the people feared. Be willing to meet them cheerfully, and they will either prove golden links in the chain of one's good or disappear harmoniously from one's pathway. Perhaps one's fear is of disease or germs, then one should be fearless and undisturbed in the germ-laden situation, and he would be immune. I like that one a lot. One can only contract germs while vibrating at the same rate as the germs. And fear drags men down on the level of the germ. Of course, the disease-laden germ is the product of carnal mind, as all thought must objectify. Germs do not exist in the superconscious or divine mind, therefore are the product of man's vain imagination. In the twinkling of an eye, man's release will come when we realize there is no power in evil. The material world will fade away, and the fourth dimensional world, the world of the wondrous, will swing into manifestation. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and there shall be no more deaths, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Wow. All right. Okay, let's look at this chapter. I actually did a video on casting the burden, and I actually also did a talk at my church about casting the burden and using that as a way to address some of the things that I constantly worry about. And I worry about my children. They're both in college now. And despite them being adults, they're both adults now. You know, as a mom, I'm still worried. So I cast this burden on the Christ within and I go free has been an enormous support for me. There's something about saying those words out loud that shifts me energetically, and I really feel very much at ease saying those words. Anyway, again, I am completely surprised and that this book, which was published in 1924, talks about the fourth dimensional realm, where and what is the fourth dimensional realm? The fourth dimensional realm is where only perfection, completion, life, and joy exist. So I really love that. Active faith is always essential. And I need to be doing some maybe journaling on what active faith looks like for me. And I think that's an important sort of assignment to do. Just sit down and journal what active faith looks like. Because it's obviously very essential for manifesting to have active faith. Okay, let's move on. So this woman who lost her husband by mistake, I don't know what that really means, but she lost her husband and wanted him back. And she was showing active faith by arranging a place for him at the table. So I'm trying to figure out what active faith, let's say I want to have a certain number of followers on my YouTube channel. And what does active faith look like instead of like checking how many followers I have, daily? What does active faith look like instead of doing that? So maybe it's not, maybe it's just putting content out that has to do with, things that I really resonate with in my heart, and just worrying about that, and knowing that my content has value to certain people out there, and that someone is going to be watching it and really connect with it, and just trusting that. There's so many other things also, like if you're going to have like sales, like I make art, look in the background. So I make art. Now, what is active faith in the fact that your art is going to move look like? There is a requirement for us to act, because that's the word inside active, right? For us to act and do something to meet sort of this manifestation halfway. Now, what I thought was interesting was music. Like she's giving us a tip here on how to reach the fourth dimension or how to do that. So, how to impress the subconscious through music. And also, she suggested that someone, you know, um, rhythm and dancing can also help with sort of uh, has allow us to reach that fourth dimensional quality. So music, dancing, any kind of movement, and rhythm is absolutely helpful to she has the actual words in here. Um Releasing the soul from imprisonment. So it has sort of this um quality that allows us to connect further. And so it's so important. I was thinking that I've been, you know, both movement, obviously, maybe even dancing. I love dancing. I love music and just allowing your body to move with the music. And then you feel a certain alignment. Or if you're in the car and you're listening to music really loud and find the right song that just helps you become more aligned, so releases your soul from its imprisonment, like she says. Um, and I needed also to hear this about how sometimes it's darker before the dawn. Like sometimes before something manifests, it's the darkest, it's the worst right before. And that really helps me because I tend to hop from manifestation to manifestation. If this doesn't work, I'll move on to the next one. But what this is telling me, it's like, don't give up. When things get tough, stick it out a little longer because that means it's about to manifest. So, and so it's so important that we don't lose faith during that time when things are really difficult because it's probably about to manifest. Um, and I love the making believe part. Continually make believe, impresses the subconscious. Um, yeah. Oh, here is the phrasing I was looking for earlier. Um, the rapturous state of mind. So dancing, rhythm, um, movement, and music can get you in that rapturous state of mind. Okay. Um, yeah. All right. Um, Giving people gifts, I really need to work on that a little more. I do tend to cling to things. I do have a lot of possessions that I don't even use, and I have. So I know that there's a lot of work for me to do in my home, even where I could use things as, give things away and show, kind of get things moving. I could do gifts, um, all these things. Oh, so she's saying music, rhythm, dancing, um, music, uh, and even giving others gifts and even like spending, let's say you get an inspired action to spend or send somebody money or gift somebody something, that also can be a create can allow you to be in a rapturous state of mind. um Lived in the world of the wondrous. I love that sentence. There's so many things in here that I could easily make a sweatshirt, like living in the world of the wondrous. um let's see. So the lion takes its fierceness from your fear. That harkens back to the last chapter we read about fear and about the sort of the chemistry behind fear, and how the more that we run from something, the more that fear chases us. And this reminds me of my cat. It always comes back to my cat, of course. So I have a kitten, and her name is Emma, and she's very predatory. Like, her instincts are very much of a predator, more than my other cats that I've had in the past. And if you even put your hand like in front of her face, she does this thing where she, like, all her claws come out and she digs them into your hand or your arm, and then she latches her teeth onto your body. But if you try to run away from her, like if you pull your arm away really quickly, it gets worse. Like, she chases after you. But if you stop moving, if you stop moving, she loosens up and she kind of forgets because that instinct is not activated. So maybe the superconscious is a cat. Anyway, I'm just joking. But yeah, so it did make me think about that, how the lion takes its fierceness from your fear. So that's exactly what happens to cats. So if you have a cat and it attacks you, you stay still, and it might just stop. And because um, that's, you're not being a prey. You're not acting like a prey, in essence. Um, Great advice here. Man should watch himself hourly to detect if his motive for action is fear or faith. And yeah, to me, that's what spirituality is. It's nothing about the other person. It's about you working on you. So man should watch himself hourly. That is what spirituality really is. You constantly assessing your own behavior and seeing and being completely brutally honest with yourself. And why are you doing the things you're doing? Are you doing them because of fear? Or are you doing them because of faith? Um, And I love this about disease or germs because I am absolutely not a germaphobe. And I work in a school with about like 100 and something people. And not once will you ever have me behave in a way that's like, oh, stay away from me. You have germs. You have a cold. Oh, I notice your nose is red and stay away from me. That is not how I act. Like, I instinctually forever have known that if you show fear of getting sick, you're more likely to get sick. So, and of course, it's funny because I've been sharing that theory with people my entire life, and I've always had some people make fun of me, not make fun of me, but pretty much belittle or poo-poo it as if it's not a real thing. So it really makes me happy to see that she, in 1920, and one of my favorite authors, believes that same thing, that one can only contract germs while vibrating at the same rate as a germ. And fear drags men down to the level of the germ. So there, I'm right. Anyway. Um, but what a wonderful chapter. I'm really enjoying reading Florence Scovel Shinn's book. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do the others. I think the next book I'm going to be doing is Theta Healing by Vienna Steibel. So if you want to start looking into that, that would be wonderful. And yes, please do comment below if you are enjoying these readings. In the description section, I am putting the other chapters in case you missed them. And that's about it. I would love to hear what you think about the book. And I'm hoping that you are loving it just as much as I am. It is seriously one of the best books I've ever read. All right. Have a good day. I'll see you in the next chapter.